Welcome to Generation Digital Workforce, the podcast that's here to explore the role of robotic process automation and other digital technologies. Whether you're just getting started or you're looking for advanced strategies and tactics, if you're curious about where human and digital workers are coming together to transform the future of work, then this podcast is for you. All right, let's get into the show.
Hey everyone, thank you for joining us this week for Generation Digital Workforce. This is Zena, and I'm coming at you from Austin, Texas today. I'm really excited you've joined us because today my guest is Paul Nerger, software technologist and vice president of Blue Prism Digital Exchange. Hi Paul, how are you today?
I'm great, Zena. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful day here in Austin.
I wish I could say the same thing about San Francisco, but it's a little bit cloudy as we're starting to move into our summertime, which of course is the coldest part of the year in San Francisco.
That just doesn't even make sense as you say it, but true. So tell us, Paul, tell our audience a little bit about yourself. Who are you and what do you do?
I manage our DX team, but I've always worked in technology. I studied at university. I worked in software prior to going to university. I did that, as a teenager when digital equipment gave us an old PDP Model 3 to our school district, and the school district didn't know what to do with it. So they turned it over to us 14-year-olds, and we started programming on it. So I've been doing it for a long time. I like to say back when only 14-year-olds were in software. But I've studied computer science and math and philosophy at university. And when you do that kind of weird combination, you kind of end up doing artificial intelligence and AI sorts of things. And I've, done lots of things in my career, but a lot of it has been in the AI arena.
Awesome. The AI arena, is that how you became part of this digital workforce generation that we're in?
I think so. If you look at the whole history of artificial intelligence, and certainly in the 70s when I was in college, we're doing this wave of AI, which was the symbolic wave. And everybody was kind of trying to pursue how do you symbolically do things? And, the area I worked in was mechanical theorem proving, which is, could computers do mathematical proof? And we knew that they could, and they did do that, but it wasn't really that useful. And, then we kind of moved into the next wave where we had expert systems or rule-based systems. And, I did some work on that for the DoD and the military. And then after that, it was kind of like, how do we apply that into business? And, now we're in this kind of new wave where it's all about machine learning and building intelligence. But the whole thing about AI is, AI is a very elusive thing. And, people chase it, but it's hard to define really what it is. And many people consider a digital worker a form of AI, and I would agree with them. But one of the things that I think that is true about AI is that it's AI until it's implemented. Once it's implemented, it becomes part of the norm. It becomes part of a system. It becomes part of your business processes. And you no longer look at it with the same degree of that AI fascination as you did before.
Yeah, there's also some, something to be said for AI has almost become a marketing term to some extent. So what does AI really mean? I mean, these two words, artificial intelligence, what does it really mean? How do you know when it is AI?
Oh, well, that's a really good question. And it was a question that was answered, years ago. And the ultimate definition was the Turing test. The Turing test was, Alan Turing was the one who posed the question that a machine or a program is truly intelligent if you could create a blind test where you had people communicate with that machine in whatever form that works. And if half the people couldn't tell that it was a machine or not, then you pass the Turing test. Because if they guessed, about half of them would choose one as the machine and the other as the human. But if you hit that 50% point, you would say that that was truly an intelligent machine. And that's the classical definition of what AI is. But, AI has been around for a long time. I know earlier we were talking about some AI from the 1770s, which is an area that I've always found fascinating.
Yeah, that was a fascinating story. You want to share that story with our listeners?
Yeah, I would, and I think I'll make a point about it as to how this experience of the 1770s is applicable today and is applicable with RPA and your efforts to chase that elusive AI. But in the 1770s, there was a Hungarian inventor, and his name was Wolfgang von Kempelen, and he was part of the Habsburg Empire. And he was an inventor. He was very interested in mechanical speech. And in fact, Alexander Graham Bell studied his work as part of making the telephone. But he built this amazing machine. And the machine that he built was an autonoma that was a chess player. What this machine looked like, it was a large wooden cabinet, and it was called the Turk, or the Mechanical Turk. And above this wooden cabinet that looked like a table that had a chessboard on it, there was this life-size Turk. He was dressed in traditional Ottoman garb. He had the robes, he had the turban, and underneath him was a mechanical skeleton. And the Turk had the ability to play chess. And this thing was a marvel. It kind of looked like Zoltar from Tom Hanks' movie Big. The only difference is he didn't just pick up a fortune and give you the fortune. What he did was play chess. And he was really good at playing chess. In fact, for 84 years, until it was destroyed by fire, the Mechanical Turk would tour Europe and the United States and play chess against people. They could open it up and you would see all these mechanical wheels and it looked like a really advanced clock on the inside. The Turk would actually move. It could pick up chess pieces and place them on the board where it wanted to make its move. If you made a false move, if you were playing it, it would pick up your piece, put it back, and then you forfeit your move at that point, and it would play the next move. So this was really an incredible machine. It was the artificial intelligence of its day.
And what year was this, 1770?
1770 is when it was first introduced. It played lots of chess players. It played Napoleon Bonaparte. It played Benjamin Franklin. It won more times than it didn't, and Big Blue, the chess, when it started getting chess players and played chess masters, it was trying to compete with it. But it had a secret. The Mechanical Turk had a secret. It used the ultimate in AI. It used a neural net, and the ultimate neural net at that. But it was artificial intelligence. It used a human brain. The secret of the Mechanical Turk was it was an illusion. It was a magic trick. Even though he could open it up and show that there was no one in it, once he shut the cabinet back up, that somebody would slide into it that could control the Mechanical Turk on a pegboard chessboard, and then it would actually go and it would do the movements and play chess. And he used chess masters to do that. He would hire a chess master, swear to them to secrecy, and then they would slide them in. So the Mechanical Turk was artificial intelligence. It wasn't real. It was an illusion. It was a magic trick. Very popular in the day. It, as I said, toured through Europe, toured through the United States. But the Mechanical Turk back in I think it was 2003, 2005, it was adopted by Yahoo. I think it was Yahoo. And what they did is they created a service called the Mechanical Turk that was, again, artificial intelligence. And what that service was you could give a problem to a crowd to solve. And you posted it on the Mechanical Turk. And that problem was given to humans to solve, and they would give you an answer back. And
what we would now call crowdsourcing.
It's a form of crowdsourcing, but from your perspective, it almost appears like it's AI. We used, in a previous job, we used the Mechanical Turk to do testing of mobile phones. And we had automated testing for mobile networks, but we needed to be able to profile the various phones so that we understood whether there was a fault. So what we would do is we would take this set of tests and hurdles, and we would go out to the Mechanical Turk and say, look, if you have a new phone, come here and do a test on it. And we would do multiple ones of those to come up with the best possible profile for a mobile phone. And, it's surprising. We learned lots of things about that. We would pay for each test. We learned that what optimal pricing was and stuff like that. But for us, it was pretty automated. And our product that contained these profiles, a new browser would come out and we would have it profiled literally within the day. It was like it was artificial intelligence, even though we knew behind that it was people. What does this mean for today? What does this mean for RPA?
That is a great question. That I was just about to ask you that. Is artificial intelligence today mostly still artificial?
Well, no, I don't think it is, but I think you can use the idea and the concept of the Mechanical Turk to guide you in your strategy for the deployment of AI. So what I kind of believe, and what a lot of people believe nowadays, is that RPA is a great platform for the deployment of AI. I know years ago, I had a product called Mindset from Silicon Graphics, which had artificial intelligence and learning algorithms and Bayesian naive networks and neural nets and nearest neighbor algorithms. It had all these things that today we consider artificial intelligence, but it was a toolbox. You had all these tools, and you would pull out the toolbox and you would use it to solve a problem, and then you would put the tools away. But what people want to do is they want to integrate the AI into their business processes, because when you're running a business, it's the process that is the most important. Well, RPA is about how do you take and orchestrate that and take these processes that span multiple software stacks and build them together in an intelligent way so that you drive real business value from it. So one of the things that I've been toying with is, well, what does that mean? How could we use the concept of the Mechanical Turk to actually solve problems? So if you look at RPA as a way of taking rote, mundane, error-prone work and giving it to a digital worker in order to execute that portion of the process, the digital worker at time to time might want to be able to talk to a human and to get a human to do something that's more creative or more difficult than a process that RPA could handle. So as a result of that, from the digital worker's perspective, When the digital worker looks at communicating to that human to get the human to do part of the work, putting the human into the loop, from the digital worker's perspective, that human appears like a Mechanical Turk. It looks like it's AI from the digital worker's perspective, even though we know it's not. It's a Mechanical Turk. It's artificial intelligence. So when you do that, you're now building very intelligent and very complete automation of your business processes, but you're also laying a foundation for the intelligent deployment of AI, real AI. And the reason why you're doing that is because you've now identified the parts of the problem that are hardest to solve. And you can now look at wherever you put the human into the loop, and you can say, what is that human doing? What portions of that task that I put the human in the loop could I instead call an AI, call a web-based interface, call whatever, such that I could pull that into the part that the digital worker does. And I do that because I want to improve quality, I want to speed things up, or I want greater consistency or lower cost. And that, I think, it's a really good way to come up with a strategy for the deployment of AI. As I said, AI is elusive. You can chase it for a long time and never really get it implemented. But thinking about things as the Mechanical Turk, thinking about using digital workers to take the robot out of the human, to take those mundane rote processes and enrich the jobs of the human. But then at the same time, looking at what the human is doing constantly and saying, now is there opportunities where I can apply AI to make improvements to those processes.
That is super interesting perspective. That I think this is the first time I ever thought about looking at it from the perspective of the digital worker, and why do I, the digital worker, need to go to the human to do something? As it's this interesting human in the loop concept, but almost looking at it from the digital worker's perspective. Why is it that they have to go to the human? Well, they have to go to the human for some form of intelligence. It looks like artificial intelligence to that digital worker, which in fact we know it's not. But if we were to give the digital worker intelligence through the means of artificial intelligence, but yet once the digital worker has it, it's not necessarily artificial anymore. So what can you do with RPA, digital workers, and AI combined?
I think you can do almost anything. And that's one of the reasons why it makes AI so elusive. When you can do anything, it's hard to figure out where to stop or where to start. So
give us an example.
Yeah. So if I have all these business processes out there, and which one do I start with? When you have too much choice, we know this, psychologists tell us, when you have too much choice, we don't know where to start. We get confused. So you also, I think, need help at determining where to start. And you can start almost anywhere. There's lots of great processes, lots of very common processes, such as invoicing or sales order processing, that you can start with and improve those processes. But one of the things that we have, here at Blue Prism is we have a process discovery tool, which uses a methodology and a questionnaire to kind of help guide you on that. You kind of answer questions about your processes and what the potential return on investment is, and it kind of tells you which ones are best suited for RPA and which ones aren't. And it's a offering that we offer at no charge. And I think it's a tremendous kind of tool to help you determine where to start.
Yeah, it's available on the customer portal from Blue Prism, which
Right.
is a great resource for both the process discovery tool as well as a wealth of other information about, robotics, our operating model, etc. So for our listeners out there, the Blue Prism customer portal is a great resource for you to learn more about not only Blue Prism, but robotics, robotic operating model, and directly go to our digital exchange, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of our program, Paul manages. You want to tell us a little bit about the idea of the digital exchange, connected RPA, and how we're helping our customers bring those AI elusive tools into an environment where they can make meaning of them today?
Yeah, absolutely. So, the digital exchange, it's more than just AI. There's lots of things on the digital exchange, and there's more and more people that are using it every day. The idea behind the digital exchange stems from the fact that, a lot of RPA is about connecting these silos of automation that are present in most companies. In fact, I saw an interesting study on this that, it was on average, the typical Fortune 2000 class company has over 640 off-the-shelf commercial applications that they have purchased. It's a tremendous amount. I know I was with the US DoD, and, they talked about the US Army having 300 different personnel systems. These are big problems. They represent big problems because this is why RPA came into existence, is that people were copying and pasting from one system to another. When you have 300 personnel systems and you're in the Army and you're going to be moved every year or so, that means that each one of those personnel systems have to be updated with a new PCS, permanent change of station. So it's a big problem. And part of what we said with the DX is, how can we accelerate the ability to build intelligent automations? And to do that, we need to be able to connect to those commercial off-the-shelf software. So what we do in the DX is we have various visual business objects, those objects that are very key when you're following the robotic operating model, that you can readily download. We have some processes that are template processes that you can readily download. We have skills, which are web APIs that go into these legacy systems that you can readily download. So the DX becomes a place where you can go and you can get the components, the ingredients to solve your intelligent process automation problem. And, to that end, I think we're doing some really exciting things with the digital exchange. Just at the end of last month, we released a version of Blue Prism Automate 6.7, which actually has a digital exchange button. It's actually one of the tabs at the top of the UI. And with that, you can now interact directly from Blue Prism directly with the digital exchange, and you can download directly into your Blue Prism instance. And it goes through a standard browser, so your proxies are protected and everything like that. But it allows you to more easily use the digital exchange. And we'll be enhancing that over time to make it even easier. We also launched at the same time the Enterprise DX, which the Enterprise DX allows you to have private assets on the digital exchange. So you can build assets that are unique to you, that you want to create uniquely for your business, and you can upload those and share those. So we have a number of customers that are now using that. The one that we launched with was the National Health Service in the UK, where everybody thinks the national health system is one big thing, but it's actually not. It's a collection of various trust hospitals and regions, and they have different centers of excellence around RPA. And what they really wanted was a vehicle to be able to share the processes and objects that they created in one trust with another trust, because there's tremendous value in that. It minimizes the time it takes to create an intelligent process automation. So the enterprise DX is a very exciting way where you can use the DX to collaborate within your company, and then you can use the public DX to collaborate outside of your company with the wider Blue Prism community. Anyone can contribute to the DX, with that asset being either private or public. Our employees contribute, our TAP partners contribute, our customers contribute. And then anyone can use those assets within their own Blue Prism environment. So the DX is a very powerful tool for getting more value out of your Blue Prism licenses.
Yes, and really sharing with the community, being able to accelerate your success by leveraging those pieces of digital workers' intelligence that are there that you can easily download and plug in. It's amazing what you can do when you add the intelligence to the digital worker.
Yeah.
Some of the examples that obviously our customers are living today is amazing.
We are. In fact, one of the things I could tell you about is how we use digital workers within the DX.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, you have some digital workers on your team, don't you?
We do. We have two. One's called Sergey, and the other one's called Deming. And Sergey was the first one that we did, and it was Eric Wilson on my team who did that.
This is a good preview for the listeners. We will be having an upcoming webinar with Eric where he's going to talk a little bit more about Sergey. So this is a good teaser.
It is. That's what I was thinking. And, if I look at Sergey, what he does is he does programming. So what he programs is he reads API documentation, and then he takes that and he turns that into a web API within Blue Prism and then posts it up on the digital exchange. So we haven't released all of Sergey's work, but a number of the assets on the digital exchange have been built by Sergey, been built by artificial intelligence, if you will. We then test those. That's our problem right now. We have some 1,500 assets that are in backlog because we want to make sure that they're good quality assets. And that's where our other digital worker comes in, who we're just working on right now. Daryl Coleman is the person who's working on that. Very gifted, very intelligent guy. And what he's doing is he's working on a new digital worker called Deming. And Deming is a quality assurance digital worker. And when we look at assets on the DX, we look at three things. We look at, is the marketing description accurate and something that we want to do? Is the legal copyright and everything taken care of properly? And is the quality there, and is it safe, and there's no malware and things like that? So Deming's job is to automate that and to bring humans into the loop when they're needed. So Deming has his Mechanical Turks that are on my team and other teams, including your team. And but for Deming, we're all Mechanical Turks.
I love that. So let me ask you this. Why did you decide to hire a digital worker for this role instead of a human worker?
It's a great question. So the reason why we did it for Sergey is that a typical web API, when you're programming a web API into Blue Prism, You're basically taking information about API endpoints out of the documentation, and you're copying and pasting it into the Blue Prism web API forms. And you're putting it into a format that citizen developers, the non-technical developer who understands the business process, could use as they map out their business processes. And we looked at that. The initial ones, the reason why we call him Sergey is we named him after Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google. And we initially started with the Google APIs. And as we looked at that problem, we realized that if we were to take all these Google APIs and we were to do that work, it would take us years to do the work. And humans would find that work incredibly boring. And, there's no programmer I know on the planet that would want to do that work. It's literally copying and pasting information from documentation into code and making sure that it works and that. And we just said it's mundane and rote work. It's why you want to take that robot out of the human. Years ago, I worked with Lego, and Lego, their greatest core competency of Lego is the fact that they use robots, physical robots, in incredible numbers. Going to a Lego factory, and they generally put them near the Lego lands. But if you went into these factories, it's like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. But instead of Oompa Loompas, you have Lego men running around. And the Lego men running around are actually the robots that build all the Lego boxes and kits and everything. And the reason why they did that is they just believed that they got better quality out of it, and that, doing mundane, rote assembly line work is not work that people should have to do. And that's kind of the way we looked at Sergey. We said Sergey is probably better at doing this. And what would have taken a human well over a year, Sergey could do in 3 hours. So that was tremendously beneficial. We also knew that if we found a systemic problem, if you're doing that with a human, how are you going to rebuild all that stuff? But with Sergey we correct Sergey and we rerun Sergey. Furthermore, we knew that we could also use Sergey to maintain the software. So if we saw a change in the API, if it was within the same version, we could issue a correction because there was a fault in the API. Or if there was a problem in that a new version of the API came out, we could actually issue a new skill that Sergey would build automatically. So there were just lots of reasons that this was better work for a digital worker rather than a highly skilled programmer, which is what it would normally have taken. You do not want to have a highly skilled programmer doing that kind of work.
No, you don't. And like you said, it's not interesting, but it's this idea of when people say rote, mundane task, I don't think they necessarily associate that with something like computer programming.
Oh, there's a lot, one of the things as I said, I've been programming for a number of years. And, one of the things that I've always said about us programmers is we are the laziest people on the planet. We don't like rote, mundane work. And, you give us early in my career, I worked on operating systems and compilers. And if you look at a compiler, that was built by computer scientists, by programmers to get us out of the business of machine language. The entire foundation and all the advances in computer science and software have all come from the fact that programmers are lazy. And we as a lazy profession have innovated to the point that we're doing the interesting stuff, not the stuff that is rote, mundane, error-prone, you name it. The benefits of software are too great. And the real interesting problems that you want programmers to really focus on and solve. There's too many of those problems out there.
Agree. I really appreciate your insights there into that decision in choosing, to go down the digital worker path. I think it's probably a question a lot of our listeners have as they're starting to explore, adding a digital workforce to their own businesses. As they're thinking through that, what trends do you see or what do you see happening, in the next, let's say 6 months that are going to impact the deployment of a digital workforce inside, of companies inside of their company? What should they be looking out for?
I think there's challenges that I think will always be there. And this goes well beyond the 6-month period. So it deals with the very nature of the future of work. What is that going to be like? And I believe that, there's been lots of writing about this, but it's reminiscent of the Industrial Revolution. We talked about the Mechanical Turk, and the Mechanical Turk was in the 1770s, and that was in the very beginning of the Industrial Revolution. It's when machinery and automata were first coming out. We were fascinated by it. It started, the Industrial Revolution. We started using steam power. We started using machinery, and it changed the very nature of our society. It changed the very nature of work. I remember I was listening to NPR, and there was a really interesting point that was made, and it was towards the end of the big boom of the Industrial Revolution was during the 1860s when Lincoln was president. And Lincoln used to call the Department of Agriculture, he called it the Department of the People. And the reason why he did that is when he was president, 65% of all Americans lived and worked on farms. Within 10 years of his death, that had dropped to less than 5%. Did we starve? No. What happened was we needed less manual work. We had tractors, we had combines, we had mechanical devices, tools that allowed us to do things more efficiently. And it changed the nature of work. And we had the Industrial Revolution, and we passed on benefits to society. And I think that same thing is going to happen in this next revolution. And it's the knowledge worker revolution. It's the post-capitalist society, as Peter Drucker called it. And, we need to think about that. And, it's not a genie that you put back into the bottle. During the Industrial Revolution, the Luddites tried that, and you just can't do it. Why would you want to, stop the advance? The thing that we need to do is we need to figure out what is going to be the future of work and how do we adapt society in such a way that society benefits from that change in nature of work.
Yes, there's been a lot of press at the latter part of 2018, so going back about a year, where it was the Institute of the Future or something similar to that had put out a research paper citing that 85% of the jobs that would exist in 2030 have not yet been invented. And of course, that got me to thinking about jobs that exist today that didn't exist, even 30 years ago, 20 years ago. And I actually have a job that's an example of that. As Vice President of Customer Experience, that wasn't really a thing. I mean, it was a thing, but it wasn't a thing. And now it is. And it's the same notion that you're speaking of people didn't need to be working in the fields anymore, but those people didn't become unemployed. They took new, better, exciting, more fulfilling jobs.
Absolutely.
Which is what I hope the current revolution, movement, whatever we want to call it, is going to enable more people to do.
Well, and there was more than just that. Other things happened too. During that response to the Industrial Revolution, that's when we got rid of child labor. That's when we started making sure everybody got an education and that their lives were richer. That's when we started, providing minimum wage and safety in the workplace. The Industrial Revolution brought a lot of benefits in terms of the quality of life for the population. And these things that we're talking about have the same potential to do the same thing yet again.
Agree. It's really exciting, this future and this generation that we're living in right now.
It is. We need to get through it, and we need to figure out as a society and our institutions need to understand and come up with solutions on how we get through that kind of knothole. But I think that we're posed to go through that same sort of transition that was seen right after Lincoln's death, where, think about it, 65% of the America's population is living and working on farms, and a decade later, it's 5%. That's tremendous change.
Yes, mind-boggling. Almost difficult to wrap your mind around, and yet we're living in a time of accelerated speed of change. It just seems to keep going faster and faster. Maybe that's my age showing.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. If you look at the technology adoption life cycle, it's accelerating. You can look at the deployment of television, deployment of color TV, deployment of radio before that. All the way, you can include the deployment of cell phones. Newer technology is adopted by society faster and faster and faster as we go along. There's no doubt about it. The numbers are overwhelmingly show that. What took radio 20 years in terms of adoption was done in the cell phone in a couple of years. And the next technology will be even faster.
At the speed of light, here we go. I'm ready for the ride.
I like that Bill Gates book. I think he used the term the speed of thought, which I like that.
Thought. I like that. That's good. That's good. This has been a great conversation, Paul. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. I had fun.
We've gotten to the point in the show that I like to call my Zena Zinger. This is just a fun question that we can just end our time together on. No pressure, but just to have a little fun. If a digital worker was a dancer, what would be his dance of choice and why?
Wow, that is a zinger. I'm trying to think what would be his. Two things came to mind immediately, and you the first one was a break dance. And
Love it.
What I envisioned was this digital worker, just doing these wild and crazy moves. But then as I thought about it, the next thing that popped into my mind was the waltz, because it's smooth and it's elegant. And, that's what we look for in our digital workers is we're looking for them to smooth out our business processes. We're looking for them to make our businesses more efficient and do it in an elegant way.
Love it. This is my favorite question of all my shows so far. And the imagination and ingenuity that my guests have shared on the fun side of their digital workers has been really fun. So you'll have to listen to the program and hear some of the other Zena Zingers.
I will. And I look forward to that.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Paul, again. To all my listeners out there, thank you so much for joining me this week for Generation Digital Workforce. Please join us again next week for another exciting episode. Until then, bye.
You've been listening to Generation Digital Workforce. If you want to hear more about RPA, AI, and other cognitive technologies that are shaping the future of work, join us next time as we continue to go deeper on these topics with industry innovators and experts. To make sure you never miss a future episode, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast player. And if you've liked what you heard today, please leave us a review. It's one of the best ways to help more people find valuable content. For show notes and more info, visit us at blueprism.com/podcast. Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.